Antonio. Terrific talk so far. Everything resonates with me. One thing just that Cindy had mentioned that I, subscribe to so much and was taught by my father was invest in yourself, because it really gives you the freedom to do whatever it is you want. And I think people see when you invest in yourself, they just may invest with you ultimately. But beyond that, my question comes back to the calling you out or calling you up. Many of us on this Zoom today are older. When I say older, 50 plus. And I think we were raised by a different generation than what exists today. If I go back to my father, and we were in a family business, he's no longer alive, but he was my mentor. And it was raw, it was emotional. If you were wrong, you were called out. But we all had a sense of enough responsibility that we knew why we were being called out. Either we didn't use all of the resources that we knew we had, maybe we were a little bit lazy about whatever it was. And it gave me a great sense of responsibility and importance that I had to do whatever it took so that I was never going to be called out on something because I recognized it was my problem. Yet today I find there's this sensitivity, forget amongst the younger generation, it just seems in society, you're now not allowed to like harp on somebody's mistakes or show them these things. And as a manager, if running my own company, I know if I get impatient as I get older, I'm more impatient. And I don't think in terms of calling you out or calling you up. I'm going to tell you what all the things that you could have done were, and then show you why this will elevate you. And it's so important and all, but yet I might be harsh. So my question to you is, how do you define that differential? And why do we have to be so sensitive when you're kowtowing to the person that you know damn well didn't really put it all in there?
Yeah, I'm sure you're preaching to a lot of people right now. To be clear, as the way you described your father, Al Neves, my dad, very much the same way, factory worker his whole life, first generation American, very much the exact same way. A couple of things. One, I'm a firm believer that clear and direct communication is not a crime. I'm going to say that clear and direct communication is not a crime. It's not a bad thing. And prior to that, one thing I think we all have to do, especially if you're leaders, if you're managers, if you have a family, et cetera, if you are in a position of leading, is one, think about what is the end result that you want. We can't lose sight of, and as I talk to coach managers, I always ask first and foremost, what is the result that you're going for? And most people aren't always clear with that answer. Second, I think something that's ridiculously important is being willing to set clear expectations of how things work and what the expectations are of others. I found with a lot of organizations, unfortunately, in the onboarding process specifically, we don't talk enough about communication. We don't talk about clear expectations, what standards people are going to be held accountable to. We're working so hard to make our workplace so attractive that somewhere we lose the real honest conversation that needs to happen. Something else that doesn't happen a lot, over the years, I'm an administrator of the Myers-Briggs type indicator assessment. I don't do that very much these days nowadays, but I think it is important in some capacity to know how people like to receive communication best. So when I'm doing workshops or facilitating with teams or doing group coaching with leadership teams, a lot of times we spend a good portion of our day talking about how people like to receive feedback. And you learn a lot in those moments. And don't get me wrong, I'm not naive. Sometimes I don't have time to deliver you feedback exactly the way you want it because chaos is going on and we have things that have to get done. But if I know putting employee Y on the spot is a bad thing because they need time to actually process, I'm hurting myself and hurting them. So just knowing how each person is going to receive information completely differently, and if you can, adjust based on that. And if you don't know how that person receives it, if they shut down, obviously the way you delivered it isn't the best way. I think another last thing to think about, and what you're talking about, by the way, is a challenge so many managers and leaders have right now, is how we frame things. So even the way you framed your example, you said something goes wrong, you tell an employee what they did wrong, and then you explain to them kind of the right way to do it. So a lot of times what we do is, by the way, the word that puts people on their heels and make them defensive immediately is the word why. If you want to get somebody's fist up, if you want to make them defensive, say, why did you do it like that? All of a sudden, their dukes are going up. One thing we all can get better at in terms of calling people up is asking better questions. So, an example of, instead of saying, why did you do it like that? We can say something like, I see you decided to do X. Tell me about how you came to that decision. And then we give them opportunity to actually share how they came to that decision. And then guess what you can do as an expert, as someone with experience, you can see where the breakdown was in their process. The breakdown was in their decision making. So we go so quickly to correcting that we forget the understanding aspect of things. And I get it. We're very similar. We don't have a lot of patience. But again, going back to what is the end goal? What is the desired outcome? Do we want long tenured employees or short tenured employees? When we ask great questions that don't put people on the defensive, it allows them to open up as well. It's huge. And when did we get, if you want to call it, if I want to say the word sensitive, when do we find ourselves like getting so defensive? I don't know when that transition, when it happened, maybe when everybody got access to a microphone that is called the phone and they could share. I don't know. Just in summary, I would say be clear on what the end outcome is that you want. Make sure we're on a regular basis establishing clear expectations and clear standards. Most people don't have those. And three, just asking better questions that don't put people on the defensive. I as a coach, if I ever shift to telling someone what to do, it's my duty as a coach to say, "Hey, Coach Tony just left the room. Consultant Tony just showed up. I'm going to give you explicit instructions of what to do." But my job, I think probably your job as a lot of managers and leaders, are to ask more questions and ask great questions. I hope that's helpful, Howard.
Excellent. Thank you.